Welcome to Visions, a series of visits to almost everywhere. I'm your host and fellow traveler, Herb Malsman. We're at Chelsea Pier in New York City, and Chelsea Pier is on 23rd Street and 11th Avenue. Quick side story before going on. Heading over here, I got off the R train at I guess around perhaps Lexington, something like that. Wherever the R train let me off from 23rd Street. I immediately walked in the wrong direction, heading over to the west side. I was heading east. I eventually, 2 blocks when I hit Lexington Avenue, I realized I was going east, but I wanted to make sure I stopped someone on the street, and I made sure not to use a New York accent. I didn't want to sound New York because New Yorkers never ask if they're going in the right direction. All New Yorkers assume, well, he's a New Yorker, he knows where he's going. So I try to put on a bit of a foreign accent or a South Carolina, almost the same thing accent. I didn't want to be caught being a New Yorker and heading in the wrong direction. And it's appropriate because our guest right now is Lynn Singer, and Lynn Singer Voice Works here in New York City. She is a master of voice and inflection and accents and hi Lynn, and is Singer come before or after your occupation?
Singer's actually my name. Singer is my name, so it's propitious. I was born to do what I do, though I'm not a singing teacher, nor do I sing professionally. I talk professionally. I've talked with voiceovers, with acting, with teaching. It's what I do. I use my voice.
Do you ever think, even though you don't sing, but singing includes voice and all that, the inflection and how you present a tune and how you put it together and arrange it, do you ever kind of think, well, singer, that's... does anybody ever say, is that appropriate, or was I the first?
No, people are like, wow, your name is your voice. They're always interested that I have, it's like the metaphor. And that's exciting because it sort of sells it. It sort of puts it in the world. Selling it isn't the right word. It magnifies it. It puts it in the world. And Lynn Singer's voice works. Not
Right.
just Lynn Singer's voice works.
Right. Do you find yourself correcting? You go to a party. Do you find yourself correcting or want to correct, or
No,
do you
no,
kind of sit back and say, no, I'm not going to do that?
No, because it's exhausting, and it also it gets very pointed, and people, I don't want to sit in a corner and listen to whether or not everyone has a good voice, or their accent, or if they have general American speech, but what I do find, which is also interesting and sometimes isolating, is that whenever I'm anywhere for any event, I end up talking about what I do. Because people are always asking me about my voice and what do I do about my voice, and then they want to know what they can do about their voice. So it's an ongoing party.
It's like meeting a doctor on the street.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a pain in my elbow. Is that the same kind of thing?
Yeah.
Are they always looking for that free advice to move along?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And most people really don't recognize what they have in their body with their voice, and what the vowels and the consonants mean, and how they can utilize who they are and what they say. It's not just from your throat and your mind. Your voice is in your body, and the more in touch you are with the voice itself, the words, and what really makes up words, and how to use them, the more powerful you are. Voice is power. I think sound is 3 times more powerful in any other sense. In the beginning was the word, the music of the spheres, and lately I'm very hooked into listening to how people use their vowels. I always go through these stages where other things or different things are catching my attention for this amount of time, and the vowels carry the emotion and the music, and the consonants carry the meaning and the articulation. Most people don't have a clue. I speak English, I'm fine, that's it. And they are very adamant about it. And even when they come and they want to do some work on it, a woman called me recently who had a Brooklyn accent, and she said, someone told me I need 10 lessons. I said, well, you might need more. And she was appalled. because she didn't understand really what it took to really speak beautifully. And the fact that somebody who does, and someone who spends their profession, an actor, a great actor, or a great speaker, has spent years training themselves. And that's a lot of work, and people are, I don't know, they think it's okay when you do brain surgery that you spend years, but everything else you take less time.
In a way, behind me, I'm here until April 28th. Today, our tape date today is April 15th. It's a Friday. A little chilly, about 51 degrees right now. We're sitting here
I think it's less, 48.
48 or 9 or 8 Celsius, something. I know it's 10 Celsius when I left. So I'm here to do some pieces, but in a way, and when we discussed this on the phone a couple of times, I mentioned to you that this is the centerpiece. This really program is the centerpiece of why I'm here. Because everything right now I'm on audiobookradio.net. I love it. I love being in the midst of Richard Todd and Hugh Laurie and all these great voices, nestled between William Shakespeare pieces and all that. And then all of a sudden Brooklyn comes along. I'm a Brooklyn guy. I don't know how to pronounce I've been living in South Carolina for...
Pretty pronounced.
Is it?
Let's just call what it is. It is. You have a New York accent.
Okay. Is it specifically Brooklyn? Do Brooklyn.
No. I'm not going to do a party trick for you.
Are you afraid?
You're the party trick.
Are you afraid if you speak in Brooklynese, you'll turn out, holy cow, all of a sudden you can't get out of it?
Yeah, no. But I don't like to do party tricks. I like people to really understand how serious I am about people to learn to speak really beautifully and how different you see the world when this happens, and using sounds. And I also I lived with a young poet when I was very, very young, and poetry was around for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then I took a degree in literature. Then I did voiceovers for many, many years, and I use all of this so strongly in my teaching because I think that poetry and language, well-written language, builds you. One of my students said to me recently, who is Greek with a Greek accent in English and a different kind of accent in Greek, is really not happy with how he uses any language. But he said, studying voice is changing my mind, which is extraordinary. It's building my mind. So it's helping him understand, language is helping him understand how to think differentently. And that's really what I want to do. I don't want to do party tricks.
Right.
You can do the party trick today with your Brooklyn accent.
Fran, the point also I was making is that I'm very happy to be Brooklyn in the midst of all this culture. I mean, I hope folks don't mind that all of a sudden you're being cultured. You know, you've got your culture happening, and then all of a sudden I come along with this, and I didn't know I was as pronounced the Brooklyn accent as you say, but I kind of like it. I don't know that I want to lose the Brooklyn accent. I think that's kind of unique, and I'm kind of proud of it. I don't know. Sounds strange?
It's what you like. I just think it limits you when you move around I wanted the world when I was young. I wanted the whole world. I just didn't want people to hear where I was from, because that was how they pigeonholed me, you know?
Pigeons, right. Okay. I'm sorry.
You make jokes about everything.
Well, we were looking at pigeons before.
We were, but there's just a couple of them right now flying along.
Well, a couple are sitting here listening in, not too far away. I can check them out. Got the ears perked up a little bit.
But I like when I travel that people don't know where I'm from, because then I can learn more and be more with wherever I am.
Did you come from an accent background where you worked to what brought you to this point? Was it a natural thing, or did you somehow work to improve yourself and then pass it on? What was the
I grew up in
force?
Connecticut, and I could get away with a lot of what I was doing just because I grew up in the East, and I went to school in San Francisco. But I always wanted theater, and I always was struck by voices. When I was very, very, very young, I heard Richard Todd and I heard Richard Burton when I was really, really young, and other Tallulah Bankhead I remember hearing and being like shocked about her voice because I had never heard a woman with such a low voice as I had. And I just knew from a very young age, from when I was 7 years old really, that something was up with my voice. And I wanted to study, and I just loved literature, I loved poetry, I loved sounds, I was just enamored of it. It was my gift, it was what I knew from a very young age, the way some people, look at a painting and go, I'm going to be a painter. I just knew that this was mine.
When you listened to your voice, you made the point about being made aware of your voice. Were you happy with it, or wanted to change it? What was your feeling at that point? How different are you today than you were then?
It's very different. It's very different because I got work as an actor and in voiceovers really fast, and I knew. And I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't use my own breath control, and I also wanted to sound. I wanted general American speech, and I knew that I just needed to study these things. So yes, it's very different, and I cannot do for you where it was because I do not have any idea, and I don't want to.
I was just going to ask you, can you go back for a moment and do it?
Can't. I haven't. It's such a process. It's like everyone when they're working, they start somewhere, and I don't even, like the people I've worked with for say 2 years to really, because that's what it takes to really get it done, 2-3 years, and I think, oh, well, what did you sound like? And I can't even remember what they sounded like because the process is so slow and steady moving forward, right? And sometimes they laugh and they do a sort of facsimile of what they remember, but it's never the real thing.
Where do accents come from? Are you born with them? Is it the genetic memory thing,
No,
or is it how does that happen? Do you grow into it?
It's what you hear. It's what you hear around you. I mean, you grow up in New York and you're going to be influenced by New York. I grew up in Connecticut, and there is some melodic connection still to that. And I think that all of the, we're such an amalgamation of different languages here, right? So there's no one language or one accent unless you study general American speech, and maybe I'll have to push that on you.
Okay, what's the most difficult accent, foreign accent-wise, to change? And
That's a good question, but I think it really depends on the person. I've had people with very heavy Mid-Eastern accents and very heavy Asian accents who have been very resistant to change, and it's their emotional system. And I've had other people who hear English and they immediately can move into, very quickly move into another way of speaking. I think it depends really on the individual. You hear what you hear what you were born with, and the pigeons and the basketballs. You hear it all, and it becomes a part of who you are.
Right.
And if my mother and her sisters had very high, small voices until they got a cold, and then their voices were very deep, but that's what they heard from their environment, and it's also got to do with power. They were brought up in a time where they did not feel comfortable really exercising their voice and who they were, right? So they did this little thing.
Right.
And a lot of people do that. A lot of women do it, a lot of men do it. The power that we have in us with our voice is immense. And your voice is your spirit in action. So when you speak, you are putting out who you are in some very, very powerful way.
Right.
And it depends on how much you want to put out who you are.
I hear the expression corrupted vowels all the time. You want to watch The Sopranos. The corrupted vowels are just flying like crazy. What are corrupted vowels? And have you ever watched The Sopranos? And do you ever go, oh my God, what's going on there? What are corrupted vowels?
I don't know.
Really?
I've never watched The Sopranos.
What about corrupted vowels?
But I don't know what you mean by corrupted vowels. Can you give me an example?
Give me some vowels.
Ah,
Go ahead. Ah?
ah.
Something.
Oh, I know what you mean. You mean like in New York, the aw sound. It's very prominent to say or, New York,
Right.
and that's probably what people mean by corrupted vowels.
Corrupted vowels.
That the sound is distorted, but that's the sound of the New York accent. So the corruption is from the general American speech. They're not sounding clear. They're not sounding. It's very self-dramatizing, the New York accent. A lot of the New York accent. It's very about
The effects
where I
and
am and where I'm going, and it doesn't really take in the listener.
where the other person is going. It's only I.
Yeah.
I was watching My Fair Lady the other night. Did bits of it, and the Cockney accent. Not only the accent, but the something about is very. It really they drag the Cockney accent. If you have a Cockney accent in Great Britain, you're not to be.
That's interesting because the general American speech and standard speech, which is the speech that's in England is considered the Queen's speech, right? Was started by the idea came through a man named Daniel Sweet, who was at Oxbridge, and he was who Henry Higgins is based on in My Fair Lady. And Daniel Sweet was a very strong friend of Bernard Shaw. So My Fair Lady is based on Pygmalion, a story by Bernard Shaw, a drama by Bernard Shaw. And Daniel Sweet was trying, as a part of the International Phonetics Alphabet, which was invented in the last century, he was trying to...
Now I'm trying to keep the wind from getting into the listening to the wind.
He was trying to change the idea of language in England. That if people all could sound alike, then the class system could be eradicated. Interesting, right?
Sounds like a plan.
Yes, but it didn't work. But the actors picked it up because it was clearer and it was more beautiful.
Right. You're wondering, we've got some wind happening and it may be coming across.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to block the wind. Oh, that just did it just out trying to block the wind. It seems to be moving north to south. It kind of circles here a little bit. I'm trying to get rid of it.
The other part of this, I'm sorry.
Sure.
The other part of this in My Fair Lady, which was demonstrated, was that once she began to speak beautifully, clearer, more like the Queen's English, in fact, she could move into society, right? She could move in areas of society that were not open to her. And that's not my intent, but my intent is that I want to go anywhere and everywhere and not have people brand me because of how I sound. And I tested it once when I was very young. I was going to a very, very fancy party. There were princesses in the room. And I was coming from rehearsal. And I had on leotards and jeans. But I spoke so well that nobody raised an eyebrow. But if I had been talking like you're talking, I'm actually exaggerating very much. But if even a little bit, if I had been talking like that, people would have been looking at me differently, and I knew that, and I didn't want that. Right. I wanted to be able to put it on and take it off when I needed to.
Right. What are PowerPoints? I think that I saw that in your online PowerPoints. Explain PowerPoints, and then we'll go to presentations, actors, and public speakers and execs and that kind of thing.
Well, PowerPoints are just a PowerPoint is when people give a demonstration with slideshows, and they have to present their new ideas to their company, and they do like a 20-minute speech, 10-minute speech, and they're flashing different signs on their screens through their. And they're needing to be clear, and they're needing to be strong, and they're needing to be talking about their ideas in a way that is communicated to their culture. And many people write and speak as if they're reading. Particularly, they write as if to be read rather than to be heard. And that's a whole other kind of skill, to be able to write in order to communicate with who you're speaking with, and not as if you're going to be read by the New York Times, you know.
Kind of a PowerPoint, silence is also dialogue, is it not? Yeah.
There was a play written called The Stronger by Strindberg, and one of the characters was totally silent through the entire play and was really stronger.
That can be silence can be extremely loud. It sounds crazy, but
silence can be deafening. Absolute deafening. It can be so powerful. So people can use that. They'll call it pauses, right? They'll call it pauses. They wouldn't call it silences.
Right, silences. I was watching Chuck Barris had a variety show he had the Gong Show. He had a variety show, and he had George Carlin on, the late George Carlin, the great George Carlin, who was a master of the speech also. He was pretty good with his speech. He came out and did nothing for 6 minutes. He spoke not a word. He was just expressions, and it was just and just the crowd he just wowed him. I mean, he did it without. Maybe that's a lazy way to get things done, to write a sketch.
I think it's a whole other idea of silence. I know sometimes in my acting classes I would have people just stand in front of the rest of the class, and they couldn't talk, and they just had to sense what they were feeling and sense what the audience, the rest of their classmates, were feeling in silence.